Final Boy Status is a podcast about scary movies and the stuff that happens in them. The entire horror genre is generally frightening and disturbing, so if you're a kid, be sure to ask your parents if it's okay for you to listen. Or don't. You'd probably be cooler if you didn't ask for their permission. But then again, I won't tell you how to live your life. Also, we will be discussing spoilers during this podcast, so don't say we didn't warn you.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Final Boy Status. I will be your host for this episode, Lanson. Yes. I was like, he's doing something in the background. Gotta let him go. Didn't mean to cut you off. I'm just like, let the guy do. Let him work. Let him work.
My F was pretty screwed up, so don't pay attention to that.
Pretty effed up.
We just taped the review. That's all up on our YouTube page.
Yeah,
also with this episode.
Heck yeah.
There's weird energy in here tonight, and I'm a fan. So because this episode is longer and more indulgent, we might get weird.
Succulent.
I'm kind of excited. It's a succulent episode. Oh God, it's so good.
As always, I am joined by two esteemed gentlemen.
Did you introduce yourself?
Yeah, I did.
Oh, good.
I'm Lanson, in case I didn't. Which
Y'all know who he is.
You know who I am. I don't need to introduce myself.
Look him in the eye. Look him in the eye and tell him right now that you know who he is.
But these land monkeys, I'm just kidding.
I identify as a landmine.
Oh, land. Are you okay with land monkey?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, land monkey, land mine. My bad. There we go.
Boom.
But we got Adam Bone right here. The coolest. I couldn't think of anything.
You really let that ride, Adam. You could have intervened at any point in time. You just let
let it go.
Let it happen.
I'm okay.
Let's see what the kid has to say. Oh, it's nothing. Never
Nothing.
mind.
You have to figure something out.
You have to do it. Anyway, and we have Luke Haueter.
It's me, at Luke Haueter on Twitter.
It's me.
At Luke Haueter on Twitter, but in real life.
Hold on.
I mean, not for you. This is virtual for you.
Anyway, we getting right back to the episode.
Get that train back on the tracks over here.
So, if this is your first time watching, or you haven't seen it in a while, at Final Boy Status, we do pretty much the age-old, what everybody does when they're watching a horror movie. We try to see how survivable it is. We also try to see if, certain choices by certain characters, you're like, they should have done this, or they should have done that. We talk about that, and just have a good time. Yeah. So, this episode, pretty psyched. It's pretty cool. This is the first episode where we're actually reviewing a movie that's still in theaters, which is dope. And we are reviewing and talking about the great sequel to the 2018 classic, A Quiet Place Part 2. So, heck yeah. That's it. And that's the podcast. Boy! Flavor Flav!
That's the podcast. Good night, everybody.
We just like to announce things.
We really said everything, I think, in this. We really encompassed all of it.
Yeah. So, kind of at the beginning, we like to rate it. We'll start on a scale from 0 to 13, 1 being on just the overall quality of the movie, as well as spookiness, since this is a horror movie podcast, also out of 13. So we'll start on down the line and just give our thoughts.
Yeah. So this movie, I'm glad, because there's we say this every time, but spoiler alert, the episode that we have on YouTube that's only 12 minutes is going to be the spoiler-free review.
Yep.
But just jumping into it, just to kind of echo what I said in that, is the first little bit totally grabbed me. I loved the first part of this movie, the prequel part, as well as leading into the stuff, because the trailer pretty much showed just the first 20 whatever minutes of it.
It was a long trailer.
Yeah, it was a long trailer. Showed the prequel part, and then also showed them walking through, her tripping that little string thing, the bottles. But then one thing it didn't show in the trailer is the kid got wrecked by a bear trap.
Oh my gosh.
And at that point, I was like, holy crap, that's crazy. And from that, I think from the beginning to that moment, I was like super into it and I loved it. And the rest of the movie was really good too. I liked, we talked about Cillian Murphy.
Yep.
His character was really interesting. He had a cool arc, albeit a little quick, kind of changing his mind on a couple things in my opinion. But it was still a very interesting character with interesting motivation. The daughter, whose name is... I forgot.
I don't remember what her name is in the movie. In real life, the actress's name is Millicent Simmons.
Millicent Simmons.
Which, you know, we all hail from the same great state, of course, great state of Utah, and she's from there originally. I doubt she lives here anymore because she's like famous now.
She's famous, yeah.
Why would she come back here?
She's still living in Odgetown.
She lives next door to us.
Hey,
why are we
up?
lying?
She was great. I think her character had really awesome motivation, really good cathartic moments when in things about her father and kind of dealing with that stuff was awesome. I really liked this movie. I think it was, for me, very intense, and there were scenes that were equal in intensity to a lot of scenes in the first movie. I think those scenes maybe have been fewer or whatever, but I don't know. I think there were moments that I was just as glued to the edge of my seat, wondering what was going to happen. I have a couple things that I would say are negatives.
Yeah.
The first thing that I noticed that I think worked in some areas of the movie, but just was something I kept noticing, and not that it super bothered me, but it did take me out of the movie a little bit, was some editing choices. One being that it did the thing a lot of movies do where there's a scene, a character's doing something, there's some intensity in the scene. That intensity is brought into cutting to another scene where a character is doing something where it's kind of intense, they're doing something. So I'll give an example. The kid is with the baby and they're locked in the thing and they're losing air, and then it cuts to the mom who's walking to find the creature in the warehouse, cutting to Millicent Simmons doing something on the other end. So there was a lot of that cutting, but to me it was really fast and really short edits of each scene, to the point it really kind of took me out, where I'm like, okay, let's just stick to this, see what's gonna happen here, then we can go to the next thing. And I don't think that style of editing is bad, but it was a little overused in this movie, I in my opinion. And usually I'm not a snob when it comes to like editing and stuff, but it was something I noticed where I wish they took a longer time, like they did with the first movie, where they let characters kind of have the moment where the creature's right there and they're kind of freaking out, and doesn't just keep doing this cutting between the people. But that's a little, I think it only took me out of the movie maybe twice for a second. But so the rest of it was really good. I enjoyed the ending a lot. I was told that the ending was really abrupt and that there were some mixed feelings about it, so I was kind of expecting that. But with that expectation in mind, I really liked where it ended. It just, they did what they were meaning to do. It didn't fix everything. There was no reunion, so there's still kind of that unsurety, I guess, a tease for the next movie that comes out. But I thought it was a good ending. So I'm going to give it a 10 out of 13 to match my original score. It was really good. There are things that bugged me a little bit, but all in all, I think it matched the quality of the first movie.
Very nice. Yeah. And for spoopiness, what would you say?
Spoopiness, yeah. I think this movie... This is going to be that point where I have to remember what I gave the first movie.
That's what I'm now doing inside my own head, is I'm like, oh crap, what did I say about the first movie?
Consistency in this episode might be all over the place. I remember the
45.
quality. I'll just give it, pretend like I don't remember what I gave the first movie, but just independently, it was really intense, and to me, intensity and spoopiness, or fear, are pretty in the same hand. I don't see a whole lot of there's a lot of gray area there. I think this intensity, like I said, to me in many scenes matched the intensity of the first movie, but I think it was less of the movie that it was happening. And So I would give it out of 13 for spoopiness. I would give it a solid 7.5.
Nice.
I think it was really effective in many scenes. There was some definite scariness, definite fear. One thing I didn't mention with this movie that kind of adds to the spoopiness for me is the first movie really established that these movies aren't scared of just killing people, especially people that are very integral to the story.
Yeah.
People who could be the main characters.
Yeah.
And so in every scene, I was left thinking, like, they could do it in this scene. I could see them killing this kid and them figuring out a way to find some catharsis at the end with it, and they could do it. So I feel like a lot of fear was in that I didn't know anybody was susceptible to these monsters. So that was really fun, and that added it to me. So 7.5.
Very nice. Very nice. Yeah, so this one, I really enjoyed it just as much as the first one. I think my only thing that's a drawback is, and again, this isn't about the quality of the movie, but rather just like my expectations. Because there's more dialogue and more speaking and more interaction in that way between characters, I felt like that kind of lowered the intensity, and I felt like there were a lot more jump scares in this one than there were in the first one, which I'm like, a good jump scare is good every now and again, but there are a couple more than for my taste personally. So that is one critique of the movie. Otherwise, I mean, it's very well made. The writing is great. I mean, the cast is awesome. I thought it was just a great continuation of the story. It was really cool to see. In the first one, you kind of have that family unit where everybody's living together in one place. It was cool to see people branch off due to necessity and due to circumstances, and to kind of see different characters interact with each other in different ways. To keep in mind the first one, for overall quality, I am going to give this a 10 just because it was, it wasn't bad or wasn't poorly made. It just didn't match the expectation that I thought.
Well, 10 out of 13, that's still pretty fetching.
I know,
good.
it's still pretty good.
Yeah.
I know, right?
In context, like, all of our ratings are going to be pretty high.
Yeah, for
It's a
sure.
very good movie.
So as far as spoopiness, I felt like the intensity was a little less in this one. I felt like it was a little watered down for me personally. So I'll give this a 7 out of 13 for spookiness. So that is my opinion.
Kaboom. Both you gentlemen have made amazing points. I'm trying to think of something unique to say that you guys haven't brought up. You know what? One thing I will say about the movie that Adam kind of started to touch on, I liked that this movie was way more brutal.
That's a good point.
I mean, it's still PG-13, still very much has to live in that realm. But yeah, like, he steps in the bear trap, like, at the beginning when the cop just gets, like, mauled and the kids are, like, right there.
Yeah.
The entire scene with Cillian Murphy on the dock.
Those guys just getting wrecked left and right.
And straight up, like, and what and the fact that Cillian Murphy straight up, like, murders that dude with, like, Scoop McNairy, by the way. Scoop McNairy, like,
I know, right? Yeah.
Not an actor everybody would recognize, but I was like, is that McNairy?
He looks like he's sunburned and grew a beard, but that looks like him.
Pretty sure it's that guy. But yeah, Cillian Murphy wrecks his shit, and it's like, it's brutal. There's a really cool homage to, like, the Steven Spielberg blood in the water thing during that scene. But I really liked that they ramped it up, and they were
that was nice.
Because the first movie was like, obviously we see the monsters take out two people. John Krasinski's whole thing is off screen.
Yeah.
But the first two are very carefully done, where you don't really see anything, and it's really really quick. This movie got a little more indulgent with some of the brutality, and I was really into it, honestly. Yeah. And it added to what we were talking about, which is in these movies, you shouldn't get used to anybody.
Right.
And I will say there is one small way where that works against the movie, and I would point to, oh no, I don't know how to pronounce his name. I think it's Diamond Hansu.
I'm that because I do not know how to pronounce his name, but he is great.
He's an incredible actor, and I really should have looked up how to say his name before we sat down to tape this. But he plays an unnamed character in the movie, and honestly, like, his death felt cheap, and that was just a real bummer. Because you see him show up, you want to see him do something interesting.
Yeah.
He plays a very pivotal role in the movie, but he is not there for long.
Yeah.
And his death feels real cheap because it's one of those, like, it's like, I know what you did last summer. Like, she gets away, then she stops and looks around.
Right. Yeah.
And he kind of had one of those things where it was just like a really dumb, like, are we sure it followed us? Maybe I need to go back. Make sure it didn't go back, and it gets got.
It's
and
there.
so that felt cheap. Well, okay, I'll say this straight up. There are some real stereotypical horror movie moments in this that really kind of bummed me out because of how original the material is.
Yeah.
For instance, when like the kid like walks upstairs to look for his mom or whatever, and there's all like these creepy hanging uniforms, and then there's like a dead body behind a curtain.
Yeah.
It felt like a horror movie vignette, like that you would see in just any horror movie, and this isn't just any horror movie.
Yeah.
So I was bummed with that sequence because it felt really cheap. And I was bummed with the death of that incredible actor and that character just because it felt like a cheap horror movie moment. Yeah. So I wish those two things specifically felt a little cheap and a little cliche, and I wish that they had found a way to elevate that felt more true to this universe.
Yeah.
That being said, I rated the first movie a 12 out of 13. I'm rating this movie an 11.5 out of 13. Yeah. So it's like I was really able to look past anything that like rubbed me the wrong way. I got over it so quick because I was on to the next thing, and I was like, dope. And Cillian Murphy, I shouted him out in the review. Burp. I shouted him out in the review, but I'm going to shout him out again and give a little more context into, like, I would not think to cast him as such a bitter, grungy, like, everything about the dude is just bad. Yeah. He's bitter. He's not a good person. He's really gross. Like, and Cillian Murphy is like such a handsome, like clean cut guy that casting him really came out of left field, and he is so good. Not just in like the acting, but this is like the most action I've ever seen him do. Yeah. And he's phenomenal. Like I said, the scene on the dock, I was just like breathless. I was like, hell yeah, this is rad. And so huge shout out to him. And yeah, again, like I appreciate this movie was really willing to go some places, and it feels like if the first movie is about how do we survive in a hostile environment, this movie is a follow-up to that. Yeah. And I have nothing but praise for John Krasinski that there's a version of a sequel that feels cheap. This doesn't feel cheap. This feels genuine. This feels like, yeah, of course this is what would happen next. Yeah. And I like the fact that it's brutal. I like the fact that it's really hard-hitting in some places. But yeah, I think it's great. 11.5. I've listed my complaints, a couple of cheap moments. Yeah. But ultimately you forget about the cheap moments because of what it ultimately facilitates, which is rad. Yeah. Right. So the kid finding like the dead body is a little bit lame for a second, but then you get a rad sequence where he's locked in a freaking vault and he has to share oxygen with the baby. Yeah. And a cheap you know what? Like the weird MacGuffin of a creature somehow rides a boat to the island. Right. Feels out of place, but then you get a rad sequence of just pure action movie star from Cillian Murphy running through the town square, like freaking grabbing kids out of the way, like
doing the Paul Revere thing.
Yeah. Get inside with how much he was yelling. It's a miracle it didn't beeline to him. Yeah, I know, right? So yeah, a couple of weird cheap moments, but the payoff is good enough that I'm willing to overlook it. And nice. I really enjoyed seeing this in a theater. Everybody's going on and on about how this is the perfect movie to get you out of your house into the theater, and I hate to I hate to back that up because I like to be cynical about stuff like that. Like, don't tell me how to watch my movie. But honestly, this is if you want to find a movie to get back to the theater, this is worth it.
Yeah,
for sure. In terms of spookiness, I touched on this in the review. I do not think this movie has the suspense that the first one does. I found this movie a lot less scary. But like I said, I think it's still great, and I don't want my score of spookiness to really like make you feel like this is a bad movie. It's not. I'm going to go pretty low. I'm going to give this a 5 out of 13 for spookiness.
Nice.
Because, yeah, there's a couple moments that really got me, but for the most part, nothing had... There wasn't really... It was pretty rare that the movie got as tense as the first one. So
Yeah.
I was kind of drawn out of it a bit by that. I wish that it had had a little more intensity. But yeah, we've talked for quite a long time about the quality of the movie.
Heck yeah.
Let's get into like the meat of this podcast, the meat and potatoes.
Surviving.
Time for the main course, boys and girls, and everyone out there. So at this point of the podcast, we profile the
gosh.
killer.
Sorry, he was like tapping something against his mic, and I could hear it over the mic, and it sounded like the creature's like creaking sound. And I was like,
They heard us.
oh, by the way, I want to say just really quick, I was watching a bunch of behind the scenes stuff just so I can
Yeah.
bring up trivia throughout the episode if we feel that it's necessary.
Yeah.
I'm going to call out something for you boys that the audience won't necessarily know this.
Yeah.
But John Krasinski was saying kind of all over the place that he wanted this movie to be his Jaws. He was always saying to people, including Emily Blunt, his wife, he's like, I want to make a Jaws one day. And funny enough, when he got the script for the first one, he didn't put 2 and 2 together that could kind of be his Jaws. But with this one, he went all out. That's why there's like the blood and the water reference and all that.
Nice.
What's interesting about that is the three of us very recently taped an episode about Jaws. So little spoiler
yeah.
for season 2. You can expect an episode about Jaws. But knowing that, I definitely saw some parallels and saw some interesting stuff. And like John Krasinski clearly wants to be like a Spielberg type. And he's darn close.
Yeah.
He's good.
I mean, you know, I don't want to... I very much would encourage John Krasinski to be his own thing and not just copy Spielberg. But, like, I would put them in remarkably similar categories. So, hey, man, you did a really good job. And having recently watched Jaws, I would say that your 2 movies together, like, back-to-back, was very pleasant. And I think... you fulfilled your own need to do a Jaws. I think you did it.
I like it. I like it a lot. Alrighty. So, at this point of the podcast, we like to profile our killers, talk about them, their strengths, their weaknesses, the in-between. So, what did we think about the crab alien people? I don't know what they're called, or if there's a name
Still
for
don't know the
them.
name.
The crab boys.
The Crab Boys.
It's because I mean we talked about this in the first one, and they are the same creatures. So there's not a whole lot more to say, except we do get a little insight on a couple more of their weaknesses. We do know they can't swim.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the big thing in this movie. They find an island, and they're all talking. They're like, why are you talking? They're like, they can't swim. And they're like, yay. So that's a big thing. I think that's a big development as far as the creatures are concerned. In the first episode, we were all like, there's no beating them. There's you could just pray to God that you don't get found. But this is a big deal as far as surviving them, knowing that they can't swim.
Yeah. And big praise to the world building of that.
Yeah.
It's so good that this movie takes what we know from the first movie, adds a little more context, and totally works. So great writing from Mr. Krasinski. Really, it felt... It didn't pull me out at all. I was like, oh, they can't swim. Yeah, okay, awesome.
They don't look like they could swim.
Not
They've
really.
got some weird
limbs. Now they stay away from that waterfall for 2 reasons.
Yeah, there it is. That's true.
Slip and slide to your death.
I do think we should point out, though, that one of the most interesting parts about this movie is clearly John Krasinski went into it kind of saying, like, how do you survive such a hostile world?
Yeah.
But now he's adding in a kind of a bonus thing here of not only do you have to worry about these creatures, like the whole like Cillian Murphy's whole thing at the beginning of the movies, he's like, the people that are left are like animals in their own right. Like they don't deserve to be saved. Yeah. And we see that with Scoot McNairy and the Doc Boys. We see them.
The Doc Boys.
That sounds like a band.
McNairy and the Doc Boys.
Scoot McNairy and the Doc Boys.
No, but you're right. You're right.
That ended up being. I did not mean for that to be as comical as it was. Oh boy. So I feel like that's something very much to take into account as well. And I feel like there's even like that brief moment where she wakes up and all of her stuff is gone, remember? And I was like, oh shoot, Cillian Murphy screwed her over.
Yeah.
And like that would have been perfectly in line with his character and I wouldn't have been surprised.
Right.
So I do think like it's great that there's now this additional weakness that you can exploit with these creatures. And that feels like great world building. But another great aspect of the world building done here is the creatures aren't your only worry.
Yeah. True.
They're not the only killers in this sense.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah. Cillian Murphy, he's the killer.
He's the man.
Cold-blooded, and I loved it.
I love it. Oh man, but yeah, that is interesting. I thought it was. I guess this is more towards the strength. It was cool to see because this kind of got brought up like. It's alluded to that they're armor and they're indestructible, but it was interesting to actually see like people actually trying and being like, "Oh, okay, cool." So like, "Oh, right, okay," that confirms it. Where it's like the cop tried to straight up shoot it with a shotgun, that didn't work, and then you have the explosion of the air tank, that doesn't do anything.
Not do much at all.
I know. I was like,
which is crazy.
Maybe. No.
I thought that was the whole plan. I thought it was like full Jaws. She was gonna blow it up with the air tank, but it wasn't that easy. Which was. No. But it led to that really cool sequence with like the sprinklers, which I loved.
Yeah,
so, right.
And I'm definitely gonna get into that when we talk about victims. Cause
heck yeah,
frick yeah,
they're still smart in this movie, which I love.
Absolutely,
it's great.
Absolutely. So, yeah, I mean, it is to bring up since we're talking about the aliens, and it's interesting.
Since we're talking about the Crab Boys,
since we're talking about Mr. Krabs,
please refer to them by their Christian names.
The Crab Boys. Boys. It's interesting. Like, I just bring this up because it's like, how did the boat get to the island? Did the alien just learn how to paddle and knew where to go?
Spindly legs, like steering the little wheel.
Yeah. So
what's the Popeye theme song?
It's Popeye's show. So anyway, that was just one of those things where I'm like, that's a little hinky in my opinion. Like the boat just, fortunately for the alien, unfortunately for the people, just made its way to the island. So I guess that's neither a strength nor a weakness, just a perspective on the Crab Boys.
Should be noted, the Crab Boys pretty good at steering boats.
They got
that's
that
a strength
down.
for them.
Oh no, they got a navy.
Put that in whichever column. There's the pros, there's the cons column. Put that in whatever column it belongs in.
You got the Venn diagram, the thing in the middle.
Video editors, get after it.
Do your thing.
Do your thing. That's what my catchphrase is now. I forgot, but yeah, that's my catchphrase.
Nice. All right. So, do we have anything else we want to talk about with the Crab Boys? Anything maybe we missed?
Definitely, I would say from the first scene, I said this in the last episode as a hypothetical, but now it's kind of brought to life, so I'll go ahead and say it. It's going to be really tough in the first day, 2 days of this to survive because of just watching that scene and them scurrying along like ants, and there's the creature just goes past you and takes out the person in front of you, and you're like, that could have been me. Right. Like, there's no, it's just happenstance. It wasn't me. It was really in that situation, especially not knowing the thing about sound, not knowing that you probably shouldn't scream, just that it's crazy to see that carnage. So I won't put that into, because this movie really is about the sequel and about everyone knows what's going on and there's less people and it's not that carnage. But I will say, just to kind of add to it, those creatures are definitely in their elements the first couple days of the invasion. They're just wrecking house.
I will say this movie actually sort of recontextualized things for me, because there's that as part of the opening sequence when John Krasinski and Millicent Simmons are hiding in that cafe with a bunch of other people, and like the one girl's like phone goes off and it comes running in, and that's the whole thing. I was really amazed how during that scene I was like, actually, yeah, instinctually I think I would be quiet. Like, like obviously there's a couple people who don't quite get it. John Krasinski's he's got to hit his famous Quiet Place pose with everybody just but I will admit that I mean there is the carnage, and that would spook you, that'd get you running. You wouldn't necessarily be worried about getting quiet, but if you get to a place where you're hunkering down like that, I would be so focused on being silent.
Naturally be quiet.
Right. So that did recontextualize things for me a little. So I would say, like, if you can get to a spot where you can hole up and get quiet as soon as possible, that would do a lot.
Yeah.
So it did recontextualize things a little bit, where I was like, you know what? I didn't give myself enough credit with the first movie, because I also was like, I don't think I make it past day one. But it does kind of make sense. Like, yeah, you probably go underground. You'd probably try to be real quiet about it. Like,
yeah.
At least I would. I mean, this isn't really like a strength or weaknesses thing. I just want to point out that this movie, I mean, John Krasinski said it in interviews and I didn't think about it, but this movie full confirms that these guys these crab boys rode to Earth bareback on a frickin' meteor. So, yeah, apparently they're pretty darn tough.
To enter the atmosphere and then survive the collision of the surface of the Earth.
I never realized how weird it was until there was an actual visual representation of a meteor falling to Earth.
Right.
And the aliens came from that, just to conceptually be like, holy crap, these guys are just raw dogging the atmosphere and totally fine afterwards. So, yeah, these guys are pretty tough.
Yeah, I know, right? It's take a little bit more than just, I don't know. Water. I mean, M. Night Shyamalan. I don't know. I guess in a way, water does their downfall. But
I was gonna say the first movie is a movie that's similar to Signs in the fact that
Mel Gibson is in both of them.
I was gonna say that
John Krasinski is clearly a Mel Gibson stand-in.
He's a man.
Make it, so I had to do it.
He's a man who's lost his faith and grown his beard.
It's a family in a farmhouse trying to survive in a very individual way. So I thought it was funny when I watched it. I made that connection that water ended up being the alien's weakness. And so it wasn't intentional, and it's different enough, but it was funny.
But I guess that's one of those things, right? If you're an alien and you haven't come up against water, which I don't know. Let's just say they haven't. But if they have them, like, 2/3 of the planet is covered in water. Somebody's like,
way to go.
Oh man, our weakness. It'll probably be fine. Maybe.
Apparently any continent, like if there was a continent that didn't get hit by a meteor, they're fine. So maybe Australia's just been chilling. Like they're all good.
They have no idea even what's going on.
Look at these bloody buggers. What are you talking about?
They're just walking around upside down. Just
of course, some of the freaking creatures in Australia, if they actually ended up there, they're probably just like, oh, right. Another reason to be careful in the outback.
I know, right?
Not even worried about it.
Dude, I know. Some of the wildlife in Australia might give them a run for their money. They're like, I thought we were the monsters.
The freaking crab boys get eaten by spiders their first week in Australia.
Yeah, fair dinkum.
Fair dinkum.
Oh, man, that's awesome.
Anyway,
I guess something we haven't, maybe we touched on it, but we also know 100% they are fireproof. So
yes, yeah.
Not only from them coming through the atmosphere, but Emily Blunt just kind of blazing them.
Blazing it.
It came out of the fire just fine. So
the Krabby Boys are down to blaze.
Yeah, they're yep, exactly.
So yeah,
dudes? I feel like let's talk about our friends, the protagonists.
The protagonists. So as always,
the protagoni. If there's more than
the
one.
Protags.
The protagonism.
The protagonism.
Yes.
I like it. Yeah.
Sweet. I'll take it. So, as always, this is the section of the show where we talk about our protagonists / victims. We try to assess their choices, what they do, what's good, what's not good. So, what do we think?
I said this, super solid choices, I think, from most people. There are a couple scenes, there were some questionable choices.
Yeah.
And I'll start with that just because,
Why not?
Yeah.
I think the scene that Luke talked about with the boy and that kind of cliche horror movie where he's going upstairs and there's some skeletons and it's all freaky, he screams, he falls backwards, the creature knows he's there. That scene is not only kind of cliche, it's also, to me, doesn't make a whole lot of logical sense. I was watching, I was like, why
is he going up?
Why is he doing that?
Yeah.
And I think, he wants to know his mom is coming back, and that's important. He's got the binoculars, but he just kind of leaves the baby downstairs.
Yeah.
I don't know. So to me, that was a really stupid decision, and that was the most glaring one that you didn't really see in the first movie, where you're just like, that is a cliche horror movie bad decision that you should just not do. Yeah. And so to me, that was one of them.
Yeah, fair enough.
And to be fair, like, that's what this podcast is about, is identifying, like, because every horror movie, not every horror movie, but like horror movies famously have bad decisions that as an audience member you want to call out. So we're not doing our job if we don't point out like the classic bad horror movie decisions.
And that's it.
And yeah, I mean, if you want to go up and look for your mom, fine. Probably don't abandon the baby.
Right.
But if you're going to do that, I guess I'm with you up until you see the dead body and then you friggin' knock over a whole thing of dominoes, whatever he did. I don't know. At this point in the world, you've seen so much death. Like when he gets like the friggin' bear trap, of course he screams. Like, make a lot of noise.
That was
Don't fault him there.
That's how it's going to be.
But when he sees a dead body in a world where there's
death all around,
thousands of them, he's like, knocks everything over. That was kind of a bummer.
Yeah.
So yeah, that whole sequence was a bummer. But every choice he makes after that is pretty solid. I mean, when he accidentally shuts the vault completely and he ends up sharing oxygen with the baby, that's intense, but honestly a good decision.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
I mean, like me personally, I probably would have just left the baby on oxygen and died. But also, I'm a full-grown adult man and he's a small child.
Sure.
Like, hard to blame him for being, I want to live, you know. I want to live. Oh, he's so selfish.
He'll never be a samurai.
I wish the other one had lived.
The right kid's gonna die tonight.
But I mean, yeah, that, and then of course our friend Mr. Hansu. I do not know how to pronounce his name.
Yes.
I feel really bad about that.
Yeah.
His death was so dumb.
Yeah.
So unearned. Other than that, I think I'm right there with every decision they make.
Yeah.
I don't think I would have put 2 and 2 together about like the sprinkler system.
Yeah.
So I would have accidentally stumbled into that, but I absolutely would use a tank to try and blow it up. So
give it a try, man. Nothing to lose.
yeah, might as well. Jeez.
And that scene, I pinpoint that scene because I think it was a moment where the character for me was a step ahead of me. I was totally falling for it, where it's like, oh, she tried to burn it and it didn't work, but she knew the whole time because she looked at the sprinkler. In the previous scene, she knew what was going on. So when those sprinklers came down, and it was almost to me like an homage to the first movie where there was that little waterfall that she was hiding behind in the basement, where she made that connection. She's like, oh yeah, running water is hard for them to hear. So super smart decision from the character that I don't know if I'd pick up on, maybe accidentally. But
I think at the very least I would be relying on the idea that the sound of the explosion would disorient the creature enough that I could hopefully find a way to move past it.
Right.
So, like, again, I would have stumbled into the sprinklers. She was definitely, the fact that she knew about them was incredible, but like, I would have gotten far enough in planning to say, if it doesn't successfully kill the creature, that's enough to disorient it so I can figure something
else out. Yeah.
Right.
Fair enough.
So, yeah, sorry, not to, like, just jump in and be like, you know, well, I'm definitely as smart as the character. No, like, she was a step ahead of me with the sprinklers for sure. But, yeah, like that whole sequence is incredible. Not to bring it up nonstop, but like Cillian Murphy at the dock,
Yeah.
Really smart.
incredible.
Right.
I mean, I don't know that I necessarily would have made the connection of. Obviously, he didn't know that they drown. He clearly didn't know about that because he's surprised by it when he sees it happen.
Right.
But I'd like to think I'd be able to reach the conclusion of like, you know what, if I'm in the water and I can hide like my natural sounds under the sounds of the waves and the natural sound of the water, that's going to go far. So I'd like to think I very smart decision that I probably could have reached in a similar way. And like the build up too of like the only word in sign language he knows is dive. Like that was so
Yeah,
great.
that
So
callback to the
awesome.
beginning of the movie. I
know,
loved
right?
that.
That's just great writing. So that whole section of like nailed it. Awesome.
I think the kind of cliche at the beginning where Millicent Simmons is like, I'm breaking from the group. I think normally that's a bad decision in most horror movies ever. But this one, to me, totally made sense. There was motivation for her to realize, yeah, my family's not going to let me go. If I talk with them, then they're going to, watch me closer. Also, it's a very selfless thing to want to do. It makes sense. So even though that's kind of a horror movie cliche that I normally don't support, I think her decision to go off on her own, at least the motivation made sense. And the fact that Cillian Murphy ended up joining her definitely helped, and
Right.
glad he did. And she probably wouldn't have made it by herself because, there's that kind of Deus Ex Machina with him blowing up its head. So I don't know if it was the smartest decision, but it made sense with her motivation and with her character, and ended up working out because he did go with her.
Very nice.
Yeah. I mean, other than like we said, the sequence with the kid and like the suits upstairs and the random thing at the end of like, I have to go back for my family.
I
Like
know.
that they're not following us anymore. So other than those, I genuinely think every decision is calculated and well made, and I can't say whether or not I would make the same decision in their shoes, but I see the logic of it.
Yeah.
And it's a good move.
The character motivation is so strong that it just bleeds through into their decisions.
Yeah. And like, sorry, not to like really gush about again like writing and directing and stuff, but like the things that like the choices tell us about each character is awesome too. Like the dimensions it adds to Millicent Simmons' character, that she is willing to brave this world on her own because she believes in helping others. And like what it tells us about Cillian Murphy, that on the dock his first instinct is like, let's kill all these motherfuckers.
Yeah.
And that he goes from 0 to 100, like he goes full werewolf in like no time at all.
I know, right?
Like it's great decision making and great character building. Just what it tells us about who they are and really puts the audience in an interesting place. So yeah, I mean, in terms of could the victims be any smarter and make better decisions? In a couple spots, yeah, but for the most part, it's so they're kind of killing it, honestly, for most of it.
Yeah. Very true.
I mean, even the whole, like, before he stupidly is like, I have to go back for my family, they're, like, driving the car, honking the horn, trying to get it away from everybody.
Right.
That was
Smart.
such a great plan.
Right.
Just instinctually to know, like, get it away from the populated area and lead it somewhere else. That was phenomenal. As a matter of fact, the only way I think that plan could have been improved is if again, I don't know how to pronounce your name, and I'm sorry. The man on the island. Let's call him the man on the island.
Sounds good.
The only way that plan could have been improved is if the man on the island just, like, dropped him off at the radio station and then just continued circling around the island, honking his horn, keeping it busy.
Yeah, true.
That way they could do their radio station business, like, without having to worry about the creature.
Yeah.
So maybe that's one improvement I would make
Sure.
over the characters is I'd just be like, hey man, drop us at the front door and you
You do your thing.
you do your thing. Like
Make your
we got a
laps.
good thing going. Try to keep that happening.
Right.
So yeah, maybe that's one improvement we could make.
I agree.
I'm not sure I
agree.
see any others that we could do.
Yeah, and I mean, yeah, I agree with everything that's said. I think, just to give an example of, I think just at the root of it, how being able to adapt on the fly and using logic, like especially at the first, where like, the son gets his foot stuck in a bear trap, so it's like he's making a lot of noise. We can't outrun it, so we're gonna have to take this position. We're gonna have to like attack the creature, which
Yeah.
I'm like, great. You
Yeah.
guys were concise.
Hold on.
You had a plan.
I said well done.
Oh,
Sorry.
I thought you said, hold on. I'm
Yeah,
like,
I thought you said
what
hold
now?
on too. It's like, what's going on?
Well
Hold on.
done. Hold on there.
What's great is you guys thought I said hold on, then you both looked at me just to have me be like,
Luke just,
This is
he's got a
good,
power over
good
us.
trust here with Luke.
Oh, shoot.
just me blank faced as you guys are like, he's gonna say something. He's gonna
Yes.
say something really
Yes.
interesting.
But anyway, that's just an example of the ability to think critically and, just keep your composure and to do a good job of surviving, I think is a good example of that. And they did great. So I don't know. And I mean, I'll be honest, this family's a lot smarter than I would have been in a lot
Yeah,
of these situations.
Absolutely.
So yeah. All right. So now that we've kind of talked about the characters, talked about their decisions, we're gonna get into this is go time. This is crunch time where we talk about how we can survive the movie if we could. And first of all, we'll start by seeing if we can make final boy status, which is basically somebody that makes it almost to the end and then they unfortunately are killed. They're the last person to be killed, so they almost make the finish line, but they don't quite make the finish line. So what do we think? Could we make final boy status?
And Adam kind of started talking about this earlier, but we are giving ourselves the benefit of the doubt that we've made it this far, yeah?
Right,
Yeah, if
yeah.
we didn't survive the first movie,
You're not going to be in the sequel, right?
yeah, but
Yeah.
at
We-
least the beginning of the sequel.
Because all
Right.
three of us decided we would have died in the first movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think we got to give ourselves the benefit of the doubt and say we are alive at the beginning of A Quiet Place
Yeah.
2.
Right.
I
We-
absolutely
We got
agree.
spawned in at the beginning of this movie.
Cool. I mean, me personally, if we're assuming that we're around at the beginning, obviously we've adjusted to what this world is.
Yeah.
We've elevated our thinking and our survival skills to like what this world demands. And I'm inclined to think that I could get Final Boy status this go around.
Yeah.
Because like we said, the big thing we were worried about the first time around is just not being aware that they hunt by sound. And that was going to be the thing that destroys us. If we're still around at the beginning of this movie, we know how it
We
works.
know.
We know how to keep quiet.
Yeah.
Apparently we can have full whisper conversations like underground. So
Yeah.
like you can still communicate with people. Again, there's like the danger of other people, but maybe we've been around enough to know that we have to be careful about who we trust.
Right.
So, Final Boy status, I think, is much easier in this movie because you have a benchmark for yourself already that you have to hit every single day. And this movie takes place over the course of what, 2 days? 2-3 days.
Yeah,
it's
something
just
like
a
that, yeah.
couple of days.
Yeah. I think Cillian Murphy says it towards the end, but I don't remember it offhand. Because the man on the island's like, how long did it take you to get here? And he's like, this long. So it's like 2-3 days.
Yeah.
So assuming that you have a benchmark that you already need to hit just on a daily basis, obviously this movie goes a little above that normal benchmark, but I think Final Boy status is much more attainable if you're already consistently, at least passing the class, so to
Right.
speak. Right. Like, maybe you're not going to get the A+, but you're passing.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'll give myself Final Boy status in this one under the assumption that I've been around long enough to be familiar with the world and its rules.
Right.
Also, because I agree with you, if you've made it this far, you have the knowledge, you have the skills. I would say as well, because assuming that we take the place of these characters, we've also have the weapon, we have the little earpiece, and we have the knowledge that gets them, and I think that just totally changes the game, as we saw with the thing with the bear trap, where it was, they decided to fight instead of flight, and they killed it. And I think that is helpful and will get you pretty far as well. And I think meeting up with Cillian Murphy and having that underground base, I feel like I'd be able to convince him to let me stay, even though he was a little resistant.
Yeah.
And so I feel like from there, it would be pretty easy to make Final Boy status in this movie with these things being given. Even if I don't have a ton of skills, if I have that secret weapon, knowing that that certain sound at that certain decibel or whatever will get him, I think I'm doing pretty well. Yeah.
Nice.
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
Where are you at, Lance, and how are you feeling about Final Boy status?
Yeah, I think, once you've gotten used to living in the world with the creatures, that's one threat that you've kind of neutralized. And I think, just me, even, when the world's not filled with aliens, I kind of keep to myself and, like, the people that I know. So, like, as far as, like, outside people and the rabid people, like, I think...
In terms of, like, how many people are consistently in this apartment, it's, like, what, 4?
Yep, pretty much.
So we already have a pretty good basis of, like, we group together, we keep quiet, we'll be okay.
Yeah, I know, right? So I think both of those threats I could avoid, pretty easily just through having created a routine and knowing the rules, and also having, the earpiece and the weapon. So I'm going to give myself Final Boy status on this. So, moving on to the championship round, where we determine if we could make Final Girl status, which is you make it through the entire movie. You are the last one standing, or the last group of people standing, depending on the movie. So, what do we think? Do we think we could make Final Girl status?
Final Girl status?
Final Girl status.
Well, I will be your final girl if you give me lunch cards.
Oh, bring back the Soviet Union. Anyway.
Oh, boy. I mean, if I really deeply think about this, like, we established, like, the people who don't make it out of this movie... Well, significantly, one doesn't make it out because he makes a really bad choice in a key moment that I certainly wouldn't do.
Yeah.
Other people that die in this movie, I guess they die because they're, like, dicks.
Yeah.
Because removing the context of, like, the prequel section that shows day one, just, like, the main story of this movie, really the only people we see die are... Scoot McNairy and the Dock Boys, and the people on the island who kind of get surprised, and of course the man on the island who makes the very poor choice in a key moment. So yeah, you know what? As long as you're willing to work as a team in this movie and make the smartest choice you can in the moment, it seems like you can make it out okay. Right. And I'm going to be confident in myself and say I would like to be a team player in this situation. So I wouldn't be like, I wouldn't be some Joe Schmo trying to, like, rob them of their stuff and then they friggin' assassinate me. And I will also say that in that key moment, I would commit to moving forward as opposed to just moving back. And I would alter the plan, and I'd keep driving my car around the island and honking and keeping it away from people as much as I could. Yeah. So with those two things in mind, I'm going to go ahead and give myself Final Girl status on this one. I think this is a movie where teamwork make the dream work. So if you're willing to be a team player, I think you can get pretty far. So I'm going to give myself that.
I like it.
I I'm actually going to do the same thing. I'm going to give myself final girl status, which is not something that happens with a lot of movies that we watch. Here's why. Because I think...
Adam is weirdly down on himself in this podcast.
Yeah.
Just a lot of like, I just dead. Dead.
I couldn't survive. No.
It's usually me, but this movie I feel confident because the problems I had with the first movie, with surviving the first movie, are kind of gone, because since the first movie I'm like, holy crap, my hay fever is going to kill me. So I stock up on medication from the store. I have tons of it. Some of it might be going expired, but it's all right.
Hey, if it expires, you just have a real fun time. You know?
So just a good night out. And so
I was having a stroke, but I'm better now. I'm okay.
He's recovered.
I counted to 10 and that was fine.
that's all you got to do.
Hold your breath for 10.
Hold your breath for 10 seconds. That'll stop a stroke.
Oh, thank goodness. It's like hiccups.
I was really worried for a second. I could smell burned toast. Turns out Adam was just overcooking his toast.
That happens too. That happens a lot. So I have that, and I also have the secret weapon device that makes them freak the fetch out. And I go out to, during the last movie, I go out to the waterfall and practice my shooting because, the waterfall's probably going to be louder.
Right.
And so I get really good at shooting. So I got the device. I'm like, boom. And I go, boom. And they're dead. Yeah. And so I go cross country, right? Because I think I'd be smart enough at the beginning of this movie to be like, okay, I need to get, because I know where I live. I know I'm by the coast, and I know that there's probably abandoned ships. So I feel like pretty early on, I'd be like, I need to get me in a boat and just get away from land. Because that, to me, is a very smart decision, even though I don't know that it's the weakness. But like one of you said, like it's pretty natural to be like, yeah, water's probably a thing that's safe, and being isolated on a boat, even not with the intention of finding an island, just being on a boat.
Yeah.
Well, and like
is a good place to be.
Yeah, and in fairness, even if they're like magnificent swimmers, the idea that they land, so let's say if they only land on the continent of America, and you're in New York, I think this movie takes place in somewhere in the state of New York. You grab yourself a boat, you jump on over to merry old England. Like, even if they're pretty good swimmers, it's really hard to believe they'll swim across an entire ocean.
Yeah.
So I feel like an island, like, it's interesting that I didn't think about it in the first movie. It should have occurred to me sooner, because when you stop and think about it, it makes a lot of sense. Just get to a continent where a meteor didn't hit. Yeah. What are the odds the aliens can swim? Like you said, if Australia doesn't get hit, go to Australia. What are the odds that the freaking creatures can swim all the way to Australia?
Right.
I don't think that's really much of an option.
Yeah.
And I feel like I wouldn't think to be as selfless as Millicent Simmons. I wouldn't be like, I'm going to use this device and play it over the big old radio or whatever. I think I would, not just because I'm a dick and I'd think about that and be like, nah, I'm just going to keep it to myself. I think I'd be really in animalistic mode where I'm like, I need to get myself safe before I can think about other sort of things. So I think I'd get on a boat. I'd go out into the ocean. I think I would inevitably find a island or a place that isn't with them, or an abandoned cruise ship or something, and just chill out and figure out my next move a lot more methodically. And I think because of that, I would survive the movie.
I like it. So I will make final girl status.
Yeah.
I'm not only surviving, I'm thriving. And let me tell you why.
Tell me.
We're going to get ourselves an old shrimping boat. And we're going to go out and we're going to go shrimping. We're going to make ourselves millions of dollars.
Wait. If this is the plot to Forrest Gump.
It's not.
Okay.
We served in the war together. One of us lost our legs. Anyway, shrimp boat. We got that going. We get a couple other boats. So what we do for like kind of get into more tourism and recreation, we supply some weapons, supply some guns, get the dock boys.
Wait, this is recreation?
This is recreation, having a good time. So what we'll do is we have like night cruises where we'll have the dock boys playing some music.
Yes, the dock boys.
And then the creatures are coming out on the coast, and it's like, all right, guys, time to fire up the old frequency. Fire that up and just plunk, 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 plunk. Charge money for that. Or not, everybody, it's been a rough time, so people need to get out their aggression. And then we're going on a world tour, boys. We're just sailing, we're touring around. We get to the down under, we have ourselves a good old time. So, I think that, when life gives you lemons, you go shrimping. So that's my take on that.
Hey, you know what? Honey walnut shrimp is the best thing on the menu at Panda Express.
It's great.
So if shrimping is our business is good.
Business is good, boys.
Amen.
Kapow. Boom, pow. Hacha!
Wop, pow! Scat man with karate.
Future me, could you cut all this out? He won't. He's such a dick. He's not going to do it.
Oh, future Luke. He's always trying to kill us.
Yeah.
We really got to be on our toes.
It's the plot to Looper.
Pretty much.
It just blows me away with the shotgun.
Poldano.
Oh, shoot.
Yeah, he was in that movie. You thought I forgot.
Yeah, I did forget. But yeah, good on him for being in that movie and dying like a true samurai. Anyway, now that we've made it to the end of our episode of Final Boy Status, we got some plugs. Any shout-outs, any plugs we want to give before we wrap this thing up?
Oh, right. Okay. I just remembered that we're releasing this like way soon because this is a special episode.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I do have stuff I can plug, actually.
Yeah.
So I am currently in the middle of directing a play called Keystone. It is part of the On Pitch Performing Arts Center's New Works Festival. So you can see that in July. I forget the exact dates, but you go to onpitchperformingarts.com for tickets for that. It's coming together really well. I'm really, really psyched about it. Also at the On Pitch Performing Arts Center, I'm going to be teaching a class about script writing. It's just for beginners, if you want to start learning about the craft, start learning about storytelling. If you think I've ever said anything on this podcast that would indicate that I can structure some screenplays, you can come learn from me, and you can come just learn the basics of how to put together a story. And then, as always, you can follow me on Twitter. I like to be funny on there sometimes. So I'm at Luke Haueter, LukeHaueter. Oh, you know what? And actually, I've been trying to be more active on TikTok lately, making more videos there. And I'd like to think that they're really funny. So if you think I'm funny at all and want to see some of that, you can go check out my TikTok. I'm on there.
Nice. As always, I'm just going to give a shameless plug to this podcast, Final Boy Status. We enjoy making it. We hope you guys enjoy listening to it. You can search us up on Spotify and wherever else you get your podcasts and all that good stuff. Google Play, Apple Music, all that good stuff. So
Google Play actually does we're going to skip over that. To point out, Google Play Music is no longer a thing.
Oh, okay. Well, I didn't know that, so that's good to know. So that's a shout-out for anybody that, when you're in a dinner conversation, don't bring up Google Play.
I wonder if this podcast was available on Pornhub.
Would we do better?
Here's a genuine question for me. If you wanted to share it with one of your friends, would you send him like the Pornhub link?
Jeez. You gotta.
Oh, that's risky.
How much would that redefine your relationship with that person to get a text from them and see clearly it is a Pornhub link? And you have to spend some time thinking about whether or not to click on that, first of all.
I know, right? Like, I know my buddy, but do I know him that well?
Like,
Are we into the same things? I don't even know.
Let's see.
It's just there's so many things going on there. I know that this is a joke that exists. I think it's a Sam Morril joke. Yeah. He's a great stand-up comedian where he's like, why is there even an option to share these videos anyway? Like, I'm never going to be watching something on Pornhub and suddenly think, you know who would appreciate this? Brian. But no, I mean, there's a lot that's layered. That's a whole thing because you as a person, you have to be like, do I trust my friend to click on this link?
Yeah.
And if I click on this link and it is what I think it is, am I comfortable with that being a new facet of my relationship with this person?
Right.
If you already use that, then it's not a big deal. But the first thing that would come to my head is, spam link, and I wouldn't
Oh,
just click
right.
on it. You know.
Oh, good man.
That's
good
not
man.
trust. This is not distrust. It's distrusting the internet, not
Right.
distrusting your friend.
Confirm.
So,
Trust.
I feel like it
Verify.
wouldn't work.
Never trust the internet, kids.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So,
Anyway.
anywho, that is our episode for A Quiet Place Part
Well,
2.
Adam, you have plugs, yeah?
Yeah, I'm in a. Yeah, sorry. I was like, I'm used to not plugging things because I have a boring life. I am in a D&D podcast. It hasn't started yet. Luke is going to know the date that it starts a lot better than me.
I actually don't. So.
Okay, well, in the near future, I'm going to be in a D&D podcast. Look out for it. The podcast is called Worlds Beyond. It's also going to be on YouTube. And the specific campaign we're playing is called The Sun Always Sets in the West. And I'm a rootin' tootin' cowboy. So...
In the game, man. In the game. I know you guys looking are like, yeah, you're stating the obvious, Adam. You are a rootin' tootin' cowboy.
Right. And the sun does always set in the west. But in the podcast, both are also true.
So, that is our episode for A Quiet Place Part 2. Thank you guys for listening. Tune in. We got some great stuff coming for Season 2.
Tune it.
So, tune in. Tune it.
Yeah, season 2, July 16th. I have it written
We
down
do
in
have a
front of
date
me.
for that.
The 16th
Some
of
really
July.
fun movies. We teased Jaws, so if you're looking out
Yeah.
for that, you might catch that
I've
one.
already recorded some other ones. It's been a
There's
good
some
time.
fun ones.
It's good times. Anyway, stay safe out there. We'll catch you next time, guys.
This has been an Underqualified Idiocracy media production, produced by Lanson Lappin, Adam Bone, and Luke Haueter. Theme music for the episode was written by Rachel Robison. You can hear more of Rachel's music at rachelrobinsonmusic.com. You can also find her on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram by searching at Robel Racheson. Artwork for the YouTube version of this podcast was created by Trinity Rodriguez. You can follow her on Twitter by searching at InstrinBaby to see more of her work. This podcast was recorded in Underqualified Studios and edited by Luke Haueter, with special thanks to Mike Fuchs for providing audio assistance. The illustrious voice acting providing the intro and outro of this episode is Shane Alvey of the Paradox Files voice acting. You can explore more of his work on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram by searching at The Paradox Files.